With just 4 games to go, the stakes were getting higher, particularly in Amsterdam, as Ajax tried to hold on to their lead at the top, while a revitalised PSV chased them down. Just behind them, Feyenoord were firing, hoping to stake a late claim to a place in the top 2. All the action and some special goals from all 9 games coming up. We start this week in Groningen, the Eridivisie's northernmost outpost. A game featuring 2 sides in contrasting forms since last month's international break. The hosts were unbeaten in the 4 games before it, but they hadn't won since, losing the last 3. However, they made the perfect start, taking the lead with only 3 minutes on the clock. Luciano Valente setting up Marco Renta with an impressive 6th assist of the season. The defender finished with the composure of a striker, but he celebrated like a man who had spent a very happy 3 years with their opponents at Heracles. A first goal for him since their 4-1 win over NAC Breda on the opening weekend. Renta wasn't the only one with a pass on the other side. Heracles coach Owen van der Looy guided Groningen to their first major trophy, the Dutch Cup, in 2015, during his 3 years in charge with their current coach Dick Lukien as his assistant. He also ended his playing career with the club and then progressed through the coaching ranks. His current side were on a roll and unbeaten in 4 since the international break, a run which had lifted them to mid-table, 3 points above their opponents. But they were soon 2-0 down. An initial scare after Ivan Mesic's mistake was compounded by Groningen taking advantage from that resulting throw. Jo Schröders impressively firing in a 5th goal of the season. Heracles simply hadn't regrouped swiftly enough to deal with the quick throw-in. However, just 4 minutes later, a mix-up by the hosts allowed Heracles to pull one back. They seemed well in control. However, a hasty pass from Leandro Bacuna and an unfortunate deflection saw Thomas Bruns then slot one in. Much of his career has been with Heracles, but he did have a season with Groningen 6 years ago, although he had no qualms about celebrating that one. The only 2 goals that he scored during his time here were actually against his current club. Heracles were unbeaten in the last 6 meetings, Groningen's most recent success coming here in January 2019, and they thought they had a chance of a penalty when Jis Hornkamp's shot appeared to strike the arm of Tom van Bergen. Referee Ingmar Åström said no, but the VAR did take a look at it. It must have been close. However, eventually they agreed with the on-field decision. Early in the second half, though, there was a penalty decision at that end, which went the way of the home side. This one looked less clear in real time, although the Groningen players spotted it before Schröders and then Helga Ekdal were both denied. It turned out Åström had also spotted it, and after playing advantage, he awarded the spot kick. Cue some understandable Heracles complaints, but a resigned look from the culprit, Mats Roorts, whose fingers the ball had flicked against. Bacuna just got on with the job and re-established the 2-goal cushion. A first goal for him since the end of August. The veteran and the skipper is now in the 2nd season of his 2nd spell at the club, having also played for Aston Villa, Cardiff, Reading and Watford in the interim. Not only were both sides chasing the final Europa Conference League playoff place, Groningen could also more or less make themselves safe with a win, and they kept the pressure on with Tika de Jonge going close. It helped that their opponents didn't deal well with that pressure, and when they coughed up the ball again in a dangerous position, the hosts exacted punishment with a 4th goal. Van Bergen and Schröders setting up Valente, and the unfortunate Brian de Kersmaker couldn't get out of the way, or direct his attempted clearance anywhere other than into the net. There'd be no coming back from here. Their second half performance was way below what their manager expected and what was needed. As a result, their opponents drew level on points with them, and both remain in the mix for 9th place. visiting anger only grew when a couple of yellow cards added insult to injury and left them without two players for the next outing against Feyenoord. Hornkamp picked up a caution for this when he was deemed to have caught Ekdal with his arm, his fifth yellow card of the season. 2 minutes later, Brunst and got one for something that he'd said when being asked to take a throw in from further back. A needless one to pick up. He too will now miss out. Van der Looy didn't blame either of them though, taking out his frustrations on the officials instead. And when he took Bruns off moments later, the midfielder had the chance to tell the fourth official exactly what he thought. The celebrations around the Euroborg Stadium had already begun, but there'd be no fifth goal as Van Bergen saw his effort denied by Fabian de Keyser. A busy night for the Heracles keeper and his back line. The first defeat to Groningen in more than 6 years already inevitable. Lukin's men leapfrogged their opponents on goal difference. It's that tight in the bottom half, even the three sides below them aren't yet out of contention. After criticism of his performance and behaviour in the cup final defeat to Go Ahead Eagles, our said defender Wouterhuis began on the bench as they hosted NAC Breda, hoping to end a 7-game winless run. The visitors' run without success was even longer, stretching back 10 games to the middle of January when they last beat FC Twente. Next, Medink's ambitious effort, just 5.5 minutes in, hinted at what was to come from him. He'd been given just a fourth league start of the season with Troy Parrott injured. NAC's response was 6 minutes later from the boot of Leo Zawa, their winger, who's on loan from Feyenoord and has been one of their players of the season. The first effort in the 19-year-old's search for a 7th league goal. With Sven Meijnens, Seya Makuma and Ernest Poku also rested, our said coach Martin Martins gave a chance to others to step up, Kees Smit doing that. Another exciting 19-year-old, he set up Zika Burmeister, only for Terence Congolo to intervene at the vital moment. Medink had scored 8 times this season, but none of those had come during his previous 3 league starts. He looked determined to make an impression and an impact though. NAC's last league win in this fixture came in September 2013, although they did win 3-1 in the Cup here in Alkmaar in February 2020, when they were a second division side. They started the second half better than they had the first, and one of their best opportunities so far came along as a result. Elias Ormarsson had scored the opener when these two met in December, although his side went on to lose 2-1. The Icelander was also the top scorer, and the one taking aim here after a quick break. Rome Jaden Owusu-Adoro reacting well to turn it away. The last time NAC tasted victory here in the league, it had been by a 0-0 back in February 2013. And given both sides' struggles with the finishing, for a long time it seemed one goal might be enough in this one. There was no shortage of intensity of effort and some bruising collisions. Notably here when Boy Kemper launched himself at the ball to try and stop Ibrahim Sadiq. Both of them suffering head injuries as a result. A lengthy stoppage for treatment then ensued. Back at his old club to watch was Ron Vlaar, a no-nonsense defender himself who also played for Feyenoord and Aston Villa. While Parrott was trying not to aggravate his groin injury, sitting nearby along with club captain Juri Klasi. Without him, Arsed continued to struggle in the final third. Meijnens had come off the bench by now, along with Michael Lado and Jaden Adai, but his effort here was too tame, and it didn't give Daniel Bielitsa much trouble. NAC NAC's best chances continued to arrive on the break, with Omarsson and Zauer usually leading the charge. The two combined here, with the Slovakian teenager earning them a corner. And somehow, Arsed then left him completely alone to saunter through and plant this free header into the corner. A tidy finish for sure, but a real lapse in concentration from whoever's job it was to track him. And he enjoyed winding up the home fans too. Feyenoord are looking forward to having him back after the impact that he's made this season. NAC aren't yet safe, but this was now looking like it could be the win, which would all but secure that. A goal which Hus might well have been able to prevent had he been on the pitch. Over on RZ's left side, Lardo also made a difference in the time that he was on, setting up Mainans for a decent chance here. One which needed Congolo to put his body on the line again. The visiting tactics, playing a 5-4-1 formation and sitting in the low block, looked like paying off. Back in December, it had taken a stoppage-time goal to win the first meeting between these two. Here, even closer to the end of the game, it was Merdink that struck to earn the home side a point with one of the goals of the season. Hugely frustrating for NAC, who got so close, but a wonderful bit of work from the 21-year-old. A fifth 1-1 draw in the last 6 games for the visitors. Their coach Karl Hofkens felt that they'd been robbed, and he didn't agree with the 8 minutes of stoppage time. They're now 14th, and they'll play Pektola next, while RZ are 6th and entertain Groningen.
Never 6 minutes.
FC Twente had won just one of their last 21 league games against PSV, but here at home at least they had been resolute, losing just one of the last 5 against the reigning champions. And they took the game by the scruff of the neck early. Nassi Univa robbing Rishi Ledesma to set up Ricky van Wolfswinkel. A quick turn later, and the veteran fired them in front. A 6th league goal, well short of his 16 from last season, but one celebrated in Amsterdam as much as here, and no reaction from Peter Bos, the PSV coach. If he was worried that it might throw his side off, then he didn't show it. Twente were hoping for the opposite reaction, having hit a bad run of form which had ended their chances of automatic European qualification. Losing to Feyenoord and Heracles, then drawing the last 2 with opponents they'd expect to beat. They came into this in 5th, but they could yet drop as low as 7th. It was the visitors that reacted better to the first goal, and in contrast to their opponents, they've turned a corner since the 7-1 hiding by Arsenal in the Champions League. Their only defeat in the last 7 came at home to Ajax at the end of last month. Ivan Perisic might have levelled things here, but met strong resistance from Lars Unnestor. The Croatian was one of PSV's best players in the first half. But so too was Guus Til, who started the game after Malik Tillman was dropped for reporting late to a pre-match meeting. His sublime touch set him on the way, and his cross was snaffled up by Perisic, who this time chose the right place to put his shot. That made it 4 goals in 6 games. His form has mirrored that of PSV during this upturn. With the focus on closing the gap to Ajax, they couldn't afford to drop any more points, and their display from here on made that scenario seem unlikely. With 20 minutes gone, they came about as close to scoring another as it's possible to get, but ultimately were denied by a combination of Unnestor and technology. Goal line technology isn't in use in the Eredivisie, but the camera angles used for VAR were poured over when Ismail Saibari's deflected shot was clawed away by Twente's goalkeeper. To the naked eye, it did seem a very tight call. And the VAR spent a lot of time checking the various images. before finally deciding that the back of the ball was only just overhanging the line. The remainder of the half was largely one-way traffic, with Thiel also coming close to giving PSV the lead. This time, good defending from Bas Carapace was one of the reasons he missed out. The left-back getting his body in the way so Thiel could only manoeuvre the ball onto the post. In tandem with those in front of him, Twente's keeper had an excellent first half. And he produced one of the saves of the round in stoppage time to turn Mauro Junior's effort onto the crossbar. A thumping shot from the Brazilian who's only scored once in the last 2 years. And that came over 12 months ago. He was also involved in the move which did lead to their second goal, carrying the ball deep into Twente territory here before it was worked quickly over to the other side. Perisic then returned the favour for Thiel with this inch-perfect cross. His header brought up a 13th goal, 10 of them in the Eredivisie, the 4th time he's hit double figures in the league in his career, and he hasn't scored many of those with his head. That was the first of a quick-fire double, which took the game away from their opponents completely. They'd scored at least 3 times in 5 of the last 6 meetings, all of which had been won. And earlier this season, they won 6-1 in Eindhoven. Thiel was again involved with another of his speciality runs from a deep position, allowing him to get behind and provide the first cross, with Noah Lang teeing things up for Luc de Jong to score against his old club. Again, everything about the move was well-timed. A 17th goal for de Jong and 13 of them in the league. Certainly respectable, but nowhere near last season's career best of 29, which fired them to the title. That title remains a possibility, but only if Ajax surrender their lead. With plenty of time remaining, further goals did look likely, with Saibari looking to become the first PSV midfielder since Mark van Bommel 20 years ago to reach double figures for both goals and assists. Unfortunately for him, his game ended here, and potentially his season too. There was no immediate statement from the club as to the extent of the injury, but it wasn't looking good, and it meant Tillman got his chance in the final 20 minutes. However, the score remained the same, and PSV closed the gap on Ajax to 6 points. A home game with Fortuna Sittard comes next, before a visit to Feyenoord for the toughest challenge of their run-in. Twente are away at Sparta Rotterdam. After their statement 4-0 win over Ajax last time out, Utrecht knew that victory in Waalwijk would guarantee European football for the first time since 2019, either in the qualifying rounds of the Europa League or even a Champions League playoff. They were on top from the off, against an RKC side that had been mired in the bottom 3 almost all season and were running out of games to save themselves. Miguel Rodriguez with the first chance just a minute in. He had scored twice against Ajax as they extended the unbeaten run to 4 matches. They've lost just 1 of the last 8 and rarely looked under pressure here. RKC's occasional counterattacks coming to nothing. This fluffed by their captain Mikel Kramer, who'd taken up a good position but saw his tame shot blocked. A 3-match winning run in late January and early February looked like it might inspire them, as did a draw with AZ at the start of April, but RKC have now lost 5 of the last 7, and they fell behind when Oscar Fraulo nodded in just shy of the 15-minute mark. A 3rd goal for the Danish midfielder, and all of them have come since February. Siva Hurmans providing the cross. The pressure didn't let up. Along with another winger, Johan Kathleen, Rodriguez had agreed to make his loan at the club permanent earlier in the month, and he led the charge for a second goal. Found well by Sebastian Haller, but he found the angle too tight. Utrecht were unbeaten in the last 11 meetings, 2 of which had come this season. A 2-1 win in the Cup and October's 3-2 league victory. Haller had got the first 2 goals of his second spell with the club in that Cup meeting. He was the one doubling the lead 4 minutes after the first goal. A perfect cross to find him from Soufiane El-Karouani, and a third goal in 3 games for the striker, who is seemingly right back in the groove. The home side included players with a connection to Utrecht. Moa Hatteren grew up in the city, while Kramer spent 6 months on loan at the club 6 years ago. This only his 5th start of the season. 3 of them have come in April due to the absence of top scorer Oscar Zavada. Utrecht are already planning carefully for next season with deals for key players, but they have 3 loanees they're likely to lose in the shape of Haller, Fraulo and Paxton Aronson. And that's before potential offers come in for some of this season's best performers. The prospect of European football might well entice some to stay, and that was no doubt a part of Rodriguez's decision-making, but this wasn't a smart decision, earning him a yellow from referee Alad Lintout. Rishonel Margaret sent tumbling. Such has been Utrecht's form this season. They're well on course to beat their previous best points tally of 63. RKC, in contrast, look well short of the quality needed to stay up. No one's let in more goals than them. Coach Henk Fraser's future remains in the balance, but they did stick by him this season, despite them looking in trouble for much of the campaign. He spent 2 years playing for Utrecht in the 80s and was in charge of them for 5 months in 2022, but showed no emotion when his old side extended their lead further. Aronson finding Rodriguez, who found the corner perfectly. A 10th goal, with 5 coming in the last 5 games, and a reminder of just why the club was so keen to make his contract a permanent one. RKC do have one player like him with game-changing ability in the shape of a Hatteren, but he can't always come to his side's rescue alone. He did help initiate this move by holding the ball up and distributing it wisely, but Kramer managed to fluff his chance when the cross was floated to him. He claimed that was because the ball flicked off the arm of defender Mike van der Hoorn, just in front of him. Something that the referee didn't see, but the VAR did have a long look at. Despite slowing the pictures down, there was no perceptible touch on the ball, and RKC were given no chance of a late boost from the penalty spot. Rodriguez got to relax early when he was taken off just before the hour, although he clearly didn't like it much. Veteran midfielder Jens Toornstra was the man chosen to come on in his place. But the Spaniard did at least get a decent reception from the away fans on his way round the pitch. Soon after, Kathleen had a rasping effort which flew just over the top, as a 4th goal for them continued to look more likely than a first for RKC. But they did also have to make another change, with van der Hoorn feeling something in his calf, which then led to him coming off. And Matthijs Diden coming on in his place. Then, with 3 minutes to go, another striker with a history on both sides popped up to add a 4th goal. David Min, who'd come on just a few minutes earlier in place of Haller. He scored 10 times for RKC last season, the club he'd been contracted to his whole career prior to joining Utrecht last summer. This was just his 3rd for his current side, and a first since he also netted against RKC in October. It put them 3 points ahead of Feyenoord and came the day before King's Day, the national holiday to mark the King's birthday, although Utrecht fans had mocked up Ron Jans as their king. Feyenoord paid tribute to Leo Beenhakker, their former coach, before the game with Pek Zwolle. Born in Rotterdam, he was a true giant of the coaching world with a career spanning over 40 years. While the hosts were looking for a fast start, it was the visitors who almost got one. in a stadium where they hadn't scored on the previous 11 visits. Eliana Heinders crashing this one against the bar. Johnny Janssen's men weren't yet safe, but they did at least have a 7-point cushion over third bottom Willemsveen. Feyenoord had their eyes on stealing second place from PSV, but their current third place is a more realistic target. Recent history in this fixture was very much on their side. They'd won 11 of the last 12 meetings and scored 5 in each of the last 2. So it wasn't a surprise when they took the lead just before the quarter hour. Ayase Ueda released by Jakob Murder, and he produced a cool finish. His first goal at home in the league since early October, but an 8th of the season overall. He's a player that Robin van Persie is a big fan of, one with the potential to become a real crowd favourite. A fraction later with this pass and it would have been offside. However, the timing was perfect. As a striker himself, the coach enjoys watching his current number 9. Van Persie had already equalled Arne Slot's record of 5 wins from his first 6 league matches. No one had won 6 of their first 7 since Bert van Marwijk in 2007. But this mistake from visiting keeper Jasper Schendelaar handed Feyenoord a second, and they never looked back. Anthony Milambo causing the embarrassing moment. He'd had plenty of time to get rid of the ball, but with his options closed down, he made a real mess of it. The first goal since October, the reward for the persistence of Feyenoord's 20-year-old midfielder, who was one of their best players and put in his best display for months. No legislating for that kind of incident. And so, each time the keeper got the ball after that, there was anticipation from the home crowd. Well founded, as he hadn't learned his lesson. He played Anselmo McNulty into trouble, and from the defender's rush clearance, Feyenoord struck again. Milambo setting up Igor Paschal. 13th league goal for the winger, and Twolo were already staring down the barrel of a heavy defeat. Their chances of a first win in this fixture since January 2019 already seem to have evaporated. So far, their top scorer, Dylan Vente, once off Feyenoord, had been kept quiet, but he did almost get free inside the first minute of the second half, only for Gernot Trauner to halt his progress in a way that was always likely to bring a caution. The Austrian defender taking one for the team. Although Twolo were unbeaten in their last 4 games, they'd won just once away all season, back at the end of January, and nothing they did in the second half suggested that that would change. Janssen brought on fresh legs in the shape of winger Dylan Mbayo and Chamira Montero in midfield, but their options in front of goal remained limited. Montero's effort here wasn't far away, but they rarely tested keeper Timon Wellenreuter. Both Janssen and Van Persie were former Heerenveen coaches. Janssen in charge far longer, from 2019 to 2022, having also been born there. The Frisian club provided Van Persie's first senior coaching role before the job in Rotterdam became too alluring to turn down. He's implemented the same kind of style, building up from the back and moving the ball quickly. He's also giving young players more chances, like 19-year-old winger Aymen Sliti, who set up this next opportunity for Hidera Reed. And seconds later, they made it 4-0 when a similar move down the same side gathered momentum quickly. The unselfish Milambo again setting up Pasha. Both of those two grabbing the headlines with match-winning performances. This one adding gloss to their 3rd consecutive home win, the first time they've managed that long a sequence all season. Their game with PSV could yet prove crucial to the final positions of both, and Ajax will be hoping that they turn up in that one in this kind of mood. They still had the energy for another, Sliti in particular, whose fresh legs were too quick for Twoller's tiring defence. Schendelaar did at least stand firm, while all around him his teammates appeared unable to prevent what was happening. Sliti beating many of them for a second time here. A flurry of late changes included a debutant, Joma Histova, and Mexican teenager Stefano Carrillo. He almost added his first goal with this thumping effort that left the crossbar rattling. Sliti was then denied again by Schandela, as Feyenoord searched in vain for a fifth goal. The club have high hopes for their latest South American recruit, even if the chances of him achieving the heights that Santiago Jimenez did are unlikely. A job well done, though, for the team and Van Persie, who takes his side to Heracles, while Zwolle face NAC Breda. A win over Willem II would give Fortuna the chance to jump back into ninth place, the last of the UEFA Conference League playoff places. The visitors, who sat third bottom in the relegation playoff place, were desperate to close the 7-point gap to safety. Both sides had conceded far too many this season, 49 each, and they struggled to score consistently at the other end, which explained the reasoning of host coach Danny Buis, who's been far more concerned with talking about securing their safety by breaching the 35-point mark. Survival was also the only target for Peter Mas, his counterpart in the away dugout. And it's been like that for some time, given their run of 10 defeats in 12, which has dropped them into trouble. The last win coming at the end of last year against NAC. With no matches on Easter weekend, Buis travelled to Istanbul, meeting up with Jose Mourinho, who might have given him a few pointers, although it's many years since he's had to focus on simply keeping a side up. These two are operating under different budgets, though. The hosts did much of the early running, but didn't have anything to show for it, Kai Sierhuis going for that spectacular effort. There was little else for the fans to get excited about in the heat before half-time. The meeting earlier in the season finished goalless, and the previous 10 had either been draws or narrow wins by a single goal for either side. So this wasn't likely to be the kind of open, expansive football that supporters might have hoped for. Mitchell Dijk's wayward effort late on certainly wasn't what his coach, Buis, had hoped for. And the half-time team talk, judging by this, must have been interesting. Willem II had by far the greater need, having managed only 3 away wins, the last in Zwolle back in December. But fashioning chances didn't prove easy, and when things did fall their way, they weren't ruthless enough. Emilio Kehrer not doing enough with this. Their best moment came just before the hour when veteran striker Jeremy Bokila bounced his opponents out of the way ahead of aiming for the bottom corner. But it proved another nearly moment when what they really need is tangible results. Their run-in is relatively kind, featuring NAC, Heracles, Zwolle and NAC Breda, but their fate remains out of their own hands. With an hour gone, a double switch by Buis led to a breakthrough. Dijks and Sierhuis making way. On came Jasper Dalhaus and Bojan Radulovic. And less than a minute later, Dalhaus provided the ammunition for Ezekiel Boulada to force home the game's first goal. Given the way the ball fell, he did well to control this finish. Sixth goal of the season. He's another player that will return to his parent club Feyenoord, having improved over the course of the campaign. Dalhaus was at it again soon after, looking to prove the point that he should have been on from the start. This time both Boulada and Radulovic ended up going for it at the same time. As Christmas approached, Willem II were sitting comfortably in the top half, but their fans have had a rotten 2025, and only the equally poor form of the two sides below them, Almere City and RKC, has kept them out of the automatic relegation spots. They could have lost by a much greater margin, without really threatening themselves after the hour mark. Christopher Pedersen with this effort. And then Kehre's late run suggested that perhaps they were saving some energy for a final push. The German winger cutting in and forcing a rare save from Matthijs Brandenhorst. That did seem to be the case when they had the ball in the net with 10 minutes to go. A smart header from Runar Sigurðsson finding fellow sub Yusuf Silla, and he found the net, only for the offside flag to go up straight away. The Icelander was the one beyond the last defender when he made a dart to field the long ball. Not by much, but it proved the correct on-field decision. Having got them up from the second tier last season, Mas, the club's first Belgian coach, may have to do it again if he's given the chance, that is. He'll be hopeful that they can come out on top in a playoff against a side from the division below, if that's what it comes to. Fortuna nearly ended with a flourish. Captain Ivo Pinto serving up his own late effort, which dropped just over the top. While the visiting fans sank, those in the green and yellow celebrated safety, and they could now look up and focus on the chance of a European player. But they still have PSV and Utrecht to play, as well as NAC Breda and Almere City. Having seen their lead reduced to 6 points by PSV, Ajax needed to bounce back from last week's surprising and heavy defeat in Utrecht. The omens were good given they'd won 15 of the last 16 with Sparta, but with the half hour approaching, the visitors nearly sprang a surprise. Mitchell van Bergen testing out the reflexes of keeper Mateos after Bertrand Traoré lost the ball in midfield. Ajax were unbeaten at home so far in the league, but Sparta looked up for the fight, having won 3 in a row as part of a 6-match unbeaten run. Shunsuke Mito also going close a minute later. Sparta's good run was happening under coach Maurice Stein, who'd left them for Ajax ahead of last season, only to be sacked after 3 months. He rejoined in November when his replacement, Julian Reistag, was also sacked. And their current run's taken them from the relegation playoff to the cusp of the European playoff. They had the better chances on the break, before the break, as Ajax played too slowly and struggled to convert their possession and territory into a tangible lead. Mito racing away again. Mateos getting his angles just right. There were jeers and whistles at half-time, but Francesco Farioli waited 10 minutes before changing things, bringing on Yoti Mokio for Traoré and Wout Weghorst for Brian Brobby. And very shortly after, they began to look dangerous. Sparta was still snapping into challenges and pressing like a well-drilled machine, but when Ajax moved the ball quicker, things started to happen. Anton Kay sent Weghorst away and he just kept the ball in, only for Sparta to just keep the ball out. Enough defenders there to block both Oliver Edvardsson and Mokio. But already Weghorst was doing what Brobby could not, registering as a threat both on the ground and in the air. Edvardsson made way soon after, with Mika Hodz coming on to provide some fresh legs on the left wing. And with 20 minutes to go, Weghorst left the crossbar rattling with a free header. Based on his display after coming on, the chances of him starting the next game with NAC have increased considerably. Ajax were now the ones doing the pressing and forcing their opponents deeper and deeper. And chances came along regularly as a result. Weghorst set the next move up and Hayi found Kenneth Taylor. On another day, 1 or 2 of these would have gone in and left Ajax in a comfortable position. But instead, the visitors clung on, riding their luck. Where they missed gilt-edged chances in the first half, now it was the home side. Taylor, usually deadly in these situations. Here, it was the frame of the goal again. With 2 minutes to go, he made way, with the fit again Yuri Rahia getting a first appearance in almost 3 months. Only the second since he rejoined the club after picking up an ankle injury in early February. Less than 3 minutes later, he had the chance to be a hero. He too struck the bar, following up another Weghorst shot. It seemed it would not be Ajax's day. A point wouldn't be disastrous, but it would give rise to talk of title jitters. By now it was one-way traffic, Sparta's goal under siege, and home hopes raised by a penalty claim. And a VAR check when Mokio's shot hit Mike Erdhausen on the upper arm. All eyes on the referee, Rob Deepening, who waited for the VAR to tell him more. But the officials were happy with the position of the defender's arm. Yet another strike of the woodwork came from the resulting corner as Weghorst put himself front and centre again. It's hard to see him not starting the remaining games, which also include a visit to Groningen and a final day at home to Twente. Pelle Clement defending on the line. And then in curious circumstances, Mateus chose to pick up the ball from what had seemed to be a back pass, although he in turn claimed it was a pass intended for defender Josip Schüttelo, who had chosen to let it run. The referee, though, didn't want to know. And Sparta staged a smash and grab, based on the second half at least. Mohamed Nasso, as a former PSV player, would have loved this. Smashing in just his second goal since leaving Eindhoven in the summer, Mateus, again, somewhat at fault. It really didn't seem to be Ajax's day. Sparta looked to have an unlikely victory, as well as mathematical safety and a real boost to their playoff hopes. But there was another twist, one that almost inevitably involved Weghorst, their man of the match, despite being only on the field since the 55th minute. He was the one slipping the ball here into the path of Rehier, who drove in a first Eredivisie goal for the club, and only his third ever. Having come through the Ajax Academy, he was a bit-part player, making just 6 league appearances before leaving for FC Twente as a much younger man. But now, he was very much the hero. After 99 minutes, the point was the least they deserved, but it could have been all three. Sparta and Stein could also point to an impressive first half. PSV, the real winners of this. Both Heerenveen and NEC were active in the battle for the last 2 European playoff slots. The Frisians had a 4-point advantage going into this, but had also played a game more and forced Robin Roofs into the game's first save inside 5 minutes. Levi Smans taking aim. NEC had won the last 2 meetings, most recently coming out on top 3-0 in Nijmegen in October. This was a fixture they'd had by far the better of, losing just 1 of the last 14. But here, Heerenveen were on top from the start, with midfielder Marcus Linde popping up with that. They certainly kept Roofs busy, and he was able to show why he's one of the best young keepers in the country, denying Christian Petrov too on the Bulgarian's full debut. His distribution isn't bad either, and he made the most of it here with a booming clearance for Sami Oise to chase down. Just as he looked to have got the better of Oliver Braude, the fullback got up again and managed to put his opponent off. Referee Yannick van der Laan wasn't interested in appeals for a foul. He was happy that the Norwegian had done just enough to get in the way. Roger Meijer called his NEC side sloppy in possession, particularly in the second half, but they struggled to create in either half, and his assessment of their performance was decidedly mediocre. They were lucky to remain level as Jon Niculescu struck the post from this decent position. Vito von Krooi had scored the opening goal early on in the previous meeting, but fans didn't really get much of a glimpse of him until past the half hour, when he managed to field this decent ball down the right and turned it into a chance, one which Andries Noppert smothered. But the home side still looked in charge, aiming to make it 3 home wins out of 3 under their new coach Robin Veltman, even if their away issues remain, with defeats at Utrecht and Sparta. Niculescu continuing to lead the charge. The only time that Heerenveen seemed to get into trouble was when they themselves made a mess of things, which Nikolai Hopland did here, trying to be too clever. He got away with it as Kento Shogai scooped the ball over under pressure, but he then acknowledged how lucky he was. Both sides made one defensive change each at the break. Hussein Ali replacing Sam Kersten for Heerenveen. NAC's Ivan Marquez came on for Philippe Sandler. It would be the Spaniard that had the bigger impact on the game, although not as he'd hoped. It was his challenge on Luc Brouwers that conceded a penalty. A simple enough decision for the referee despite the over-dramatic denials from Marquez himself. Nicolescu shouldered the burden and slotted the spot kick. A 10th goal in all competitions for him, his best tally so far in the Netherlands. It seemed they'd earned themselves more breathing space when Linde slotted a second goal midway through the half. But instead of these celebrations came a bump back down to earth. It turned out that Ilyas Sabawi had been offside when he received the ball to cross it. So the Swedes' sharp shooting was for nothing in the end. Veltman seemed to have already known it. The winger didn't quite look properly all the way along the line to guide his position. They would have only had themselves to blame for not finishing the game off, and they were fortunate that NAC couldn't muster a decent response after the break. Another substitute, Milos Ljukovic, was denied by Roofs after not getting enough elevation on this effort. The coach called it a deserved win, but it could have been much more comfortable for him in the final 10 minutes. There was little threat for them in truth, save for some playground pushing and shoving between Bashar Ernal and Brouwers. It came after the NAC winger pushed him away. The upshot was nothing more serious than a yellow card for each of them once the initial flashpoint had subsided. And there was little of note after this. Heerenveen once again struggled to cap off promising breaks, but having already done enough to reach the 40-point mark and give themselves a 4-point cushion over the chasing pack. One final potential scare failed to materialise here for the visitors, who limped away, having failed to land a blow. Although they do remain just 3 points off 9th place. Their run-in brings games at both ends of the table with Willem II, Ajax and NAC Breda. Heerenveen have RKC, Go Ahead Eagles and Feyenoord. This week's final game pitted bottom side Almere City against the newly crowned Dutch Cup winners Go Ahead Eagles, who now have Europa League football to look forward to next season. The home side still harboured hopes of a great escape, but found their opponents hard to contain, at least early on, Ricardo Visos seeing yellow for a shirt pull on Mati Soure. The Eagles are unlikely to drop lower than their current 7th place. They could finish as high as 5th, although they effectively now have little riding on the final 4 games, and they look sharper, at least at first. And had Visos not already been booked, he might have got one for this lunge from Victor Edvardsen. He was probably lucky he didn't get another from the referee in Manskop. His coach, Jeroen Rijsdijk, looked like he was debating how soon he should haul him off. The hosts were the league's lowest scorers, and they'd lost 3-0 when they visited Deventer earlier in the season. But they did actually come closest to scoring in the first half, thanks to some perseverance down the left from Charles Brim. And it was their right-back Marvin Martins whose deflected shot hit the bar hit. As the half wore on, the Eagles' week of celebration started to become more evident. They managed only 1 effort on goal to 12 from Almere City in the first half. Visos nearly had the last laugh here, but he was indeed taken off at the break. Visiting midfielder Enrique Janzana had actually said in an interview during Wednesday night's celebrations he expected that Almeria City would probably beat them, given the lack of their usual matchday build-up and preparation. They were the first to a lot of balls, but the wastefulness in front of goal continued with Junior Cadil off target. Eight minutes in, though, they did have the ball in the net, thanks to a great header from James Lawrence. But what looked like being the Welshman's first goal in Dutch football, and his first in over 6.5 years, was then thrown into doubt by a VAR check. And eventually it was ruled out completely for offside, much to his manager's frustration. The game was more end-to-end in the second half, and that meant that Almeria City also got tired. The Eagles let the ball do more of the work, hitting some long balls to pin their opponents back, whereas the hosts then tried to use their pace on the break to cause the damage. However, goalkeeper Yari Debusa wasn't about to be beaten. One of their cup final heroes, he produced a decent stop to deny Thomas Robinen. Soon afterwards, one of Tom Hayes' free-kick specials whistled over the top and they edged towards the final 15 minutes with a little bit of optimism. However, then the visitors looked to have made their quality count as a neat move of their own, and that line-breaking pass saw the ball end up in the net. Edvardsen, the scorer, having first seen that effort turned onto the post by keeper Norden Bakker. But when the ball came back in, Finn Stokkers was flagged for a foul on the keeper, and that left him on the floor while Edvardsen could fire in. So his celebration didn't last, although the on-field decision still had to be ratified by the VAR. That was eventually the case. So both sides were back to square one. Janzana, whose honest interview made headlines, did actually last the 90 minutes, and he was still patrolling midfield and trying to stir things up as the final 10 minutes approached. He also had a go at goal, which, while not on target, did bring up a corner and eat up some time as the keeper was taking no chances. They had two final opportunities. The first falling to Iraqi winger Ali Jassim, who was making the first start of his loan from Italian side Como. His only goal against Pek Zwolle earlier in the month had helped them earn a point. Here, though, he didn't hit the target, rushed into a shot which sailed wide. His manager's reaction summing things up perfectly. The last was engineered by Cornelius Hansen after some understandable sloppiness from Evert Lindhorst. After he lost the ball, the Norwegian then went on a mazy run, ending in predictable fashion with a tame shot. The visitors got away with a point. Almeria City needed all three, but the draw only moved them off the bottom and a point above RKC. Still, 4 from the relegation playoff place, 11 from safety. So a match week spread from Wednesday through to Sunday threw up some potentially pivotal results, with Ajax dropping points for the second game running and giving PSV just the smallest hint of an upset. 3 of the bottom 4 lost, while the fight for the last playoff places is now the most keenly contested. The gap at the top is 7. PSV have a game in hand. Feyenoord and Utrecht are vying for 3rd, and it's tightly packed from 9th to 15th. We'll be back next time, but until then, from me, Jonathan Beck, it's goodbye.